So as I was mentioning, the word has three mnemonic: bha, ra, tha. So as we were talking that it is a communication tool, this dance form was actually introduced in order to communicate the quintessence of the ethical and moral values embedded in the literatures. That is exactly because we most of them were not familiar with the Sanskrit literature those days. There was another form called Prakrit literature, which they were talking in which was more of a colloquial language. So, in order to deliver the quintessence of the Sanskrit literature, this was used. It's more like a communication tool because people can always understand sign languages and actions, and with the spectacle, it makes it even more uh, both entertaining and also a communication tool to deliver the significance of the literature. So that is why we have bhava here, which is the emotions. We deliver the emotions, and ra stands for raga, which is the music. Through music, and ta stands for thala, which is nothing but the rhythm. We have a good metronome cycle throughout the dance. Any repertoire you can take, there is a metronome cycle. And there are number systems that we use to adhere to when we practice those repertoires. And Natyam is the Sanskrit word which represents drama. So it's a form of storytelling. All right. So moving on to the next. Why am I not able to? All right. So the repertoire of the dance form is we categorize it into three parts, which is the nritta. The nritta is nothing but the technical performance, and it mostly aims to engage us, the sense of the audience. Like with the footwork, for example, is what is nritta. People start feeling a little bit of they are drawn into the dance form because of the spectacle in the footwork and the nuances that the artist delivers in the footwork. And Nritya is the expressive part or the expressive aspect. And that is the part which attempts to communicate the feelings or the bhavam or the storyline of the literature. And the last part is the Natyam, that is usually the play or the plot, which which incorporates the Nritya part, the emotion part. Moving on to the next. Many of you have wondered about the costumes, as I mentioned in the earlier workshop. So there is a spectacle that is associated with the dance form. The reason being, in those days, you need there was no concept of this um, lighting or the background effects or the sound effects. It was more of a live accompanying performance, and you have an open amphitheater, if I would say, just as in Greek theaters. So people would the Greek theater they actually use masks so that you know what character they are doing. But here we use only our facial expressions. So in order to elevate the facial expressions and in order to deliver it to the audience who is even sitting at the last row of the theater, we have to have this spectacle associated with it, with the bright colors, with the big eye makeup and everything. That is why the costume always has a spectacle associated with it. These are the vocal or the instruments that we usually use when performing. Mridangam is very essential because um, that is the that is I would say that is the most significant that plays the most significant role in the talam part, the metronome part. So without the mridangam, it is very hard, and it is the instrument that is called as devanadam. There are a lot of percussion instruments, but we use mridangam because that belongs to the devanadam, which means it is belonging to the divine instrumental group. And the next one we use is a string instrument. It can be a violin or a veena, or we can even use a woodwind instrument like a flute. And Natwangam, which is in the farther left of the screen, that is extremely essential, mostly because The guru plays it and he leads the entire team, which is the mridangist, the percussionist, or the person playing the flute or the string instrumentalist. Apart from this, we also have a vocal performer who actually sings the songs. We use symbols, which I will be dealing with today, and more like a sign language in order to deliver what we are thinking. This is sort of a communication through symbols. I would say like a pantomime, which is set to music. And whatever gestures we use convey the mood or the emotion of the underlying story or the plot. This is technically called as hastas. We categorize it as asamyuta hastas, samyuta hastas. Asamyuta hastas means single hand gestures. We use one hand to represent all the symbols. Samyuta hastas is double hand gestures. We use both the hands to deliver our thoughts. Many of you were wondering if it has any similarities with yoga. Yes, some of the postures, of course, has similarities with yoga. There are the 108 karnas, which has a lot of postures similar to yoga asanas. And I would relate it to the bhakti yoga aspect because yoga, according to me, is actually a way of living. And if this dance form is also very similar to that when it is related to the spiritual, philosophical, or the bhakti margam aspect of it. The science part of it, it actually improves your breathing, technically your diaphragmatic breathing. And diaphragmatic breathing is extremely essential because that makes you more attentive. And that is why we first when we first start the class we say that put your scapulae down and broaden your shoulders and enable a good diaphragmatic breathing throughout the class. And also the axis. We can see a median axis running between the head through your pelvis. So that is the standing posture. We get that right before we start. So these are the breathing emotions that you normally have when you're in a relaxed, sleepy state. And what we are focusing is this state, which is a diaphragmatic breathing. This is exactly what is enabled. And here, clear and attentive, this part, the second one. I'm sorry, the second one. That is what is enabled. So this is what we were talking about in the last class. Any questions so far? And otherwise I can go to the video.
Lavanya ji,
Yes.
if you could explain the meaning of yoga and specifically bhakti yoga for those of you who don't know Ashtanga yoga.
Bhakti yoga is some, so I will talk about the dance form and how it can be treated as a bhakti yoga, which is more relevant. We do different repertoires in Bharatanatyam. Mostly when you take the central piece, which is the Varnam, there is the Naika, and she always finds, she avoids for the hero of the play, which is the Naiki Bhavam. And what it actually indicates is that there is the soul in every single human being, and it actually finds for liberation. That is the actual storyline of most of the Varnas, but we deliver it in different forms, like love towards a lover, or a mother loving a child, or a devotee seeking liberation to the Lord. So everything has different types of expressions, but the underlying plot is unification with the Supreme. That is what is called as bhakti. And that is why this can be treated as a way of living too. So you finally want a unification with the Supreme, a state where you have peace or moksha, whatever, liberation of the soul.
What is the meaning of the word Nayak or Nayaki?
Nayaki is the heroine of the play.
Would it also mean like performer and dancer? Like
Nay-
in general?
no, I don't think so. Nayaki is the heroine of the play. or whoever is playing that role as a heroine.
As far as instruments go, because obviously violin is more of a Western instrument, was there anything like ektara or any other instruments? Because ektara is the simplest of all instruments, which is one string. So was ektara ever used in these performances?
I'm not aware of it being used in Bharatanatyam at least. Violin, I'm not sure if it. I mean, if it, I'm not really sure. I have to go back and check if it was a Western instrument and it was incorporated later. But I think violin has been prevalent at least in the South India for a very long time.
Okay. And also just because you said bhakti, what is bhakti? But just yoga, the meaning of the word, the union, and if you could just generally give a very brief meaning of the word yoga itself.
Yoga is also, I would say, yoga is harmony. Yoga, more than a bhakti, correlating it to bhakti, yoga is more of seeking a harmony. And that is why you have so many asanas. It is split into three or four categories, if I'm correct. You first practice the postures, which is the asanas, and get your body ready. And then the second way, and then you go into meditation and the deeper aspects of yoga. And again, the final destiny of yoga as well is the Bhakti Marga, where
So
you see liberation of the soul.
yeah, I think if anybody else wants to ask question, they can unmute themselves and ask the question.
Oh, okay.
I see a question in the chat. I'll address it
Oh,
and
yeah.
please go ahead. Please let me know if dance can help in teaching youngsters with learning disabilities. Any suggestions to help? Absolutely. See, I would say this in not only dance, any art form can be used as a very good intervention treatment tool for any form. Like music is a very good intervention treatment tool for speech therapy. And similarly, dance is a very good intervention treatment tool for developing the motor skills. So I would definitely, and even we tried using Bharatanatyam in a community art center for people with Alzheimer's and not with Parkinson's, I think Alzheimer's and dementia. It I think it's there are various I mean, diverse forms that people get interested to know about each form, and when they focus on that, they forget what they are going through, and it definitely helps them. And it is also quite interesting because art is always tied with heritage literature, which makes us more curious um, to explore the culture or the heritage or the cuisine or the dress, whatever it is associated with it. So, thereby, we are also learning the art history, literature, and definitely it could trigger good learning ability in the children, or at least trigger the interest in them to know and to explore more.
I wanted to add to that because I have a brother who is cognitively impaired, and I have just during the lockdown decided to teach him dance moves and dance steps. And I cannot tell you how much he is flourishing because, sometimes disabled people don't realize or they don't communicate that they do feel excluded. And so when they have a teacher who actually spends time with them, doing movements and just getting to know their bodies and the functioning of them better, they flourish. My brother loves it. So he can't wait. We do it 1 hour a day. And it's just to any type of music he wants. And it's any movement that, I feel that he would enjoy for that day. We do hips, hands, arms, head, feet, bending at the knees. So I do highly recommend it. Even if it's just ad hoc, whoever wants to do a little bit of dancing with that individual. My
Yeah,
brother loves it.
absolutely, I agree with it. I think it definitely at least brings out their social skills more. So it's a very good tool that we can use for people who are differently abled or differently challenged. It's a good tool to use.
Thank you.
What is the highest word? So what is the word of the highest form of yoga attainable by the dance?
Mhm.
See,
Yeah, you
or
mentioned it.
moksham. Moksha or mukti. Yeah, that is moksha means liberation of the soul. That is what we are seeking for. Or mukti is another word that is used for the liberation of the soul. That is what people seek who are practicing yoga, who are practicing this dance form. Most of the repertoires in the dance form, that is what the dance speaks to the ultimate. I would say that is actually very much related to the death, but I would actually say that it is the state of mind that you have of complete, you're not, you don't have that agitation or the anxiety. That is how I would probably scientifically term it. Or you don't have it. When something exciting happens, you don't go to the high, and when something very disheartening happens, you don't go low. You stay calm, and that is the state that we all want to be in.
So are there certain words, say in English, that we could translate moksha as? Because there are so, could it be something like trance or ecstasy or satisfaction or happiness? Like which shade of that is moksha?
Moksha, as I told you, it's directly related to liberation of the soul, which means I would act probably link it to death or liberation of the soul to the ultimate. But then
Also, I guess she's probably talking about words like Ananda, Nirvana, which are, very common. But Ananda and Nirvana are not exactly moksha, because Ananda is bliss and, Nirvana is, I guess, ecstasy, so to speak. So I guess those are very common words. So that's why people can't translate moksha, because there is no such concept in other cultures. I guess it's very unique to Indian culture.
Thank you.
any other questions? Otherwise, we'll move on with the video, the remaining part. Yes, yes, Rose.
Thank you.
You have a question, Roseanne?
No, I said I wanted to say thank you.
Oh, okay.
All right. I'm just going to start sharing the screen again so that we could probably move on. 1 minute. Okay. All right, it's there. 1 minute. Let me know if you're able to see the screen. Yes.
We have to go to revival now.
This drama, how this dance form actually came into existence.
Brahma and spoke to him. They wanted an object of diversity. The Tamil Hindu. Now, let's get into the origin of drama. The Krita Yuga passed with the reign of Swayambhuva, and the Treta Yuga commenced with the career of Vaivasvata Manu. People became addicted to sensual pleasures and were under the sway of desire and greed. They became affected with jealousy and anger and found their happiness mixed with sorrow. Jambudvipa, protected by Lokapalas, was full of gods, Dhanavas, Gandharvas, Yakshas, Rakshasas, and great Nagas. The gods with the great Indra, as their head approached Brahma and spoke to him. They wanted an object of diversion, which must be audible as well as visible. And they wanted a common diversion which will also convey the moral values embedded within the Vedas, which could be enjoyed by all the people, all color groups, and all varnas. With that request, Brahma thought, I shall make a fifth Veda on the Natya with semi-historical tales which are called Itihasa, which will conduce to duty, dharma, wealth, artha, as well as fame, and will contain good counsel and collection of traditional maxims, which will give guidance to people of the future as well in all their actions, will be enriched by the teachings of all authoritative works, Shastra, and will give a review of all arts and crafts. With this resolve, the Holy One, from his memory of all the Vedas, shaped this Natya Veda, compiled from the four of them, which are none other than the Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharvana. The recitative, which is the Patya, he took from the Rig Veda, the song from the Sama Veda, the histrionic representation, Abhinaya, from the Yajur Veda, and sentiments, Rasa, from Atharva Veda. And thus was created the Natya Veda, connected with the Vedas, principal and subsidiary, by the holy Brahma, who is omniscient. After the creation of the Natya Veda, Brahma said to Indra, semi-historical tales have been composed by me, and you are to get them acted by gods. Pass on this Natya Veda to those of the gods who are skillful, learned, bold in speech, and inured to hard work. At these words of Brahma, Indra bowed to him with folded palms and said in reply, O the best and holy one, gods are neither able to receive it and to maintain it, nor are they fit to understand it and make use of it. They are unfit to do anything with drama. The sages who know the mystery of Vedas and have fulfilled their vows are capable of maintaining this Natya Veda and putting it into practice. On these words of Indra, Brahma said to Bharata, O the sinless one, you with your 100 sons will have to put it into use. And in that order, Bharata learned the Natya Veda from Brahma, and he made his able sons study it and also learn its proper application. At the command of Brahma and for the benefit of the people, Bharata assigned to his sons different roles suitable for them. He then prepared them to give a performance, prayoga, in which was adopted the dramatic styles, Vritti, such as verbal, Bharati, the grand, Satvati, and the energetic, Aravati. Now Brahma told him to include the graceful Kaisiki style also, and he asked Bharata to name materials conducive to its introduction. Thus addressed by the master, Bharata replied, asking him to give him the instruments necessary for putting the graceful style into practice. At the time of Neelakanta's dance, Lord Shiva's dance, he had seen the graceful style appropriate to the erotic sentiment, and that requires beautiful dresses and also is endowed with gentle angaharas and has sentiments which are rasas, states, bhava, and action as its soul. This style cannot be practiced properly by men except with the help of women, thought Bharata. Then the powerful Lord Brahma created from his mind nymphs who were skillful in embellishing the drama and gave them over to Bharata for helping him with the performance. Brahma, Swati, together with his disciples, was employed to play on the musical instruments, and celestial musicians, the Gandharvas, such as Narada and others, were engaged in singing the songs. Thus, after comprehending the dramatic art, Natya, which arose out of Vedas and their different limbs, Bharata, along with his sons as well as Swati and Narada, approached Brahma and said that the dramatic art has been mastered and prayed for his command. On these words, Brahma said that there was a very suitable time for the production of a play which has come. The banner festival of Indra has just begun. So he thought that they could make use of the Natya Veda now on that occasion. Sage Bharata then went to that festival in honor of Indra's victory, which took place after the Danavas and Asuras were killed. In this festival were jubilant gods assembled in great number, and Sage Bharata uttered with satisfaction the holy benediction containing blessings with words in their eightfold aspects, which is the Ashtanga. Afterwards, Sage Bharata devised an imitation of the situation in which the Daityas were defeated by gods, which represented an altercation and mutual cutting off and piercing. Then Brahma, as well as all the other gods, were pleased with the performance and offered them all sorts of gifts as a token of joy that filled their mind. First of all, the pleased Indra gave his auspicious banner. Then Brahma, a Kutilaka, and Varuna, a golden pitcher. Surya, the sun god, gave an umbrella. Shiva and Vayu, the wind god, a fan. Vishnu gave them a lion seat. Kubera, a crown, and goddess Saraswati gave visibility as well as audibility. The rest of the gods and the Gandharvas, the Yakshas, the Rakshasas, and the Nagas who were present in that assembly and were of different birth and merit, gladly gave his sons speeches suited to their different roles, states, sentiments, and strength, as well as beautiful ornaments. Now, when the performance relating to the killing of the Daitya and Danavas began, the Daityas who came there, instigated by the Vignas, with Virupaksha as their leader, said, "We shall not see in this manner this dramatic performance come forward." Then the Vignas, together with Asuras, resorted to magical power and paralyzed the speech movement as well as memory of the actors. Seeing this injury to them, Indra sat in meditation to ascertain the cause of break in the performance and found out that surrounded on all the sides by the Vignas, evil spirits, the director, who is the Sutradhara, together with his associates, actors, has been rendered senseless and inert. Then, with eyes turning in anger, he adorned with all bright jewels and took up the best banner star. With this jarjara, Indra smashed to pulp the asuras and the Vignas who were hanging above the stage. Then all the Vignas, together with Dhanavas, having gone, the gods said in joy, O Bharata, you've got a divine weapon with which all destroyers of a play have made Jarjara. Hence, it will have the name of Jarjara. The jealous Vignas who may come to do violence to actors will go away on seeing the Jarjara. When the play was ready and Indra's festival was going on in full force, the jealous Vignas began to create terror for the actors. Having noticed these attempts caused by the insult of Daityas, Sage Bharata, along with his sons, approached Brahma and prayed that the Vignas are determined to spoil their dramatic performance. So they requested Brahma to enlighten them about the means of protection. Brahma then insisted that they would be carefully building a playhouse of the best type with the help of Vishwakarma. Construction of the playhouse will be seen in the next lecture.
Let me know if you have any questions from what you have listened. It just dealt with the first chapter of Natya Shastra and how an evolution of the playhouse and whereabouts of why the dance form was created and it came into existence. That's just a small storyline.
Uh, what is the Veda and what are the four Vedas?
Rig, Yajur, Sama, Adarvana.
What does the word Veda mean?
Veda is the literature. Veda is the book for life. It gives you the do's and don'ts. You have certain moral values, right? It all emerged with the Vedas.
Does the word Veda means science?
I don't think so.
Okay. Who were the Devas, Asuras, Nagas, etc.?
Devas are okay. I will tell you in a simple context. Devas, the good one, Asuras, the bad ones. Villains, heroes, something like that. You know. Rose, do you have a question? You had a question? I think
Veena asked the question, the four Vedas, a Veda, and that more or less it's the rules. But that new, now in the West, we know about Ayurveda, which is a healing science. So is Veda part of that Ayurveda? Is that how the word came about?
that's a very good question. But Ayurveda is comes under medicine. It doesn't
Medicine, right. Yeah.
it doesn't fall under the literature. These four Vedas are the literature part of it.
Okay.
That is why I just formulated it as a rule book. And I never know what Vedas are, but there are certain constraints what is into the Vedas. Because sometimes Vedas, women are not supposed to practice Vedas. That is what they have been practicing as religion. I would probably think why they told this was because of the recitation that requires. It comes from the stomach, and you sometimes we tend to strain the uterus more. Probably they would want women to strain the uterus more and more. That is why they didn't encourage them from reciting the Vedas aloud. But in order for the quintessence of Veda to pass to everyone, that is why the itihasas were created. Itihasa means this is what happened. Itihasas are nothing but Ramayana and Mahabharata. They are actually probably a compilation of all Vedas, which delivers the rule book in a more exciting and an entertaining fashion. Since you were able to listen to this because there were no mantra recitation, or no religious aspect of it. It was more like a story to you. It's just like telling a story to a child. So you listen to it, and you also then you can take the moral value from that story.
Oh,
That is what is itihasas. And this Natya Veda, which is nothing but the Bharatanatyam dance form that we are practicing, is the fifth Veda, which is a compilation of all the four Vedas. So you don't have to go and read all the four Vedas separately. You can learn it in a more entertaining fashion. This is what I have understood from the literature. This is my personal take on it. Different people can have different perspective, but this is what I feel, that they have created this in order for us to learn it in a more entertaining and in a more um, easier and an interesting way.
okay. Right. Thank you.
But
Who was
I
Vishwa,
definitely not the Veda that is listed in this.
who was Vishwakarma?
Vishwakarma, the lord of, I would say he was the lord who was in charge of most of the constructive works. You can see Vishwakarma in most of the Vishnu temples as well. He's the consort.
So he was kind of the engineer or architect, so to speak.
Yeah, architectural stream.
Mm.
He was more into the architectural part of it. Because even in Mahabharata, you would have heard about the story when Arjuna was facing a battle with the all the Nagas. What happened was Vishwakarma, and he won. And then Vishwakarma was invited, and he built an entire state for him. So he's more of the architectural or the engineering side of it. Was there any puja done as a part of this story? Uh, what kind of puja, Sarita?
I'm not sure, but as part of all these traditional stories, we see that some puja will be done. Was some kind of puja done? Some yagna, something like that?
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a part and parcel of the Indian culture to do puja before any invocation. They might have done it, definitely.
Um, don't you normally do Saraswati Puja before the beginning of any dance or music recital?
No, the invocation begins with a Ganesha Stuti or a Ganesha Slokam. More relevantly, the invocation begins with the Ragam Nate in order to have a good uh, probably a happy note or a happy presence, starting with a Ganesha Stuti in Nate Ragam is traditional in Bharatanatyam.
Oh, also, isn't the space where they're performing considered sacred and you don't wear shoes or anything on that particular space because it's considered sacred space?
It is more because yes, it is a sacred space. We do it in a bare feet, and I see the science behind it. It's a very good barefoot exercise. You can Google for the benefits of a barefoot exercise. It's even published in Harvard. Uh, and I would rather say it is very difficult to do it with shoes or socks as well, because you have to have a solid, the steps that we are doing, the footwork that we are doing um, tends to have a very strong grip over the floor. When you do it with a shoe or a socks, right, or just plus socks, there are a lot of chances of accidents happening. So it is better to do this kind of art form barefoot.
Does it have kind of some acupressure benefits because you're banging your feet on the floor? So different parts of the
It
soul.
definitely have, but I am not sure of the technical aspects of the acupuncture. I have not dealt with it.
This might not be a question you can answer, but so if there is this origin of dance as part of, the literature, the Vedas, and basically a way to perhaps reach the state of moksha, why is it that, say, the arts, the cinematic arts, dance and movies and things like that, people are sometimes, women in particular, they're sort of really denigrated, sometimes even in the press, that, oh, you're not leading the right life. That's not a moral life. If the arts are so tied to Vedas and, some type of religious or spiritual life, why do you think that exists?
This is an excellent question. So there are, I can answer it really from my personal standpoint again. What you see in the cinemas are not the dance form that we actually practice. It is more of a folklore is also there. Folk is also representing culture. It's not even folk. It's some kind of mixture. I'm again not blaming the Bollywood for any reason. That is a separate sector. That is perhaps why I have never encouraged dancing Bharatanatyam in a clubhouse or in a Diwali celebration. I never do it. The reason being, see, you are there to enjoy the food and you are there to enjoy yourself there. That is probably not the place where you will be thinking of philosophical values in the spiritual context. So there is a place and a time for you to represent this dance form because the world is changing. Those days, at least in India, people were more introspecting, which means that they were dealing, they were not. That is why the beginning of the lecture I would have mentioned in the Krita Yuga, Krita, Treta Yuga, Krita Yuga and all, you started getting addicted more to sensual pleasures. You did not have enough time to introspect, and that is why there is a lack of literature. Uh, I would say lack of producing literature, more literatures like what they did in the past, because we don't have enough time to introspect. And the dance form and the cinema, whatever we are looking at right now, is not the dance form that I'm referring to. They're totally different. And this world, though this is a small world of dancers, we might know each other, we are practicing the dance form. I would honestly say that it has become more commercialized right now, at least at this point. It is Dancers are facing difficulties to sculpt the right niche for them in order to balance the commercialization and also adhere to the traditional aspect of it, which is the bedrock of what this dance form is and why people are getting attracted to the dance form. And what actually happens is that the right kind of people, they don't have enough funding. It's a totally different topic. They don't have enough funding. They don't have the right exposure. I would say they don't have any media connections or journalism or press helping them out. So even the more the creative work they produce, it stays only within the closed group. If I can, I mean, if I answered, did I answer your question, Vasia?
Yes, I mean, it's just interesting to hear you talk about, how this particular dance form does fit into what we generally see as dance from India, because we don't really see Bharatanatyam very much.
Bharatanatyam is a typical South Indian dance. It is in no way connected. Of course, North Indians have their own culture, their own ethnicity, and or the beautiful traditions there. But this is more from southern part of India, and what has happened right now is this has become more of a expensive dance form to learn or
Yeah.
to practice. And I was so lucky because I was born in a family of artists, so I didn't have to go elsewhere to learn this art form or to practice the art form. It was more like a part and parcel of my life. Just like I eat, I slept, I danced, and I learned about it. I grew up with it. And I was also very fortunate to see the struggle that they were undergoing as artists, though they were able to make enough for their living, but it was not like they were really able to support the family with just their income. It's hard for every artist today. I work with a lot of artists through a non-profit organization, and as artists, everybody is facing that difficulty. It's becoming hard for artists all over the world, especially this, at least Bharatanatyam dancers, I would say they are lucky. There are a lot of other traditional dance varieties which are almost getting endangered or geoparadized, if I could use that term, especially the Yakshaganas. There are very good martial arts in Kerala called Kalaripayattu. people would have not even known the name of this Kalaripayattu. They know yoga, but they don't know Kalaripayattu. But what they actually would love to include in their own fitness regime is this Kalaripayattu or the Varmakalai, because it has more of movement and, and toning your muscles more than what other martial arts would do, but it is not exposed enough. That is the truth.
Would you compare, like when we compare, say, Indian movie dances, you could say that, Bharatnatyam is like classical ballet, and Hindi film dances are like what Madonna and, the other people do on stage. Would that be a valid comparison? Because classical ballet requires years and years and years of practice, and, all the Madonnas and all the other, Jackson or whatever, they come and do stuff and they wear sorts of clothes which are very, very different from ballet. And ballet artists struggle, and pop culture makes all the money.
I cannot comment on it because I don't know the culture. That is one thing. And but I can always tell you that this requires a rigorous training and years of practice, and it is and I wouldn't blame the cinema kind of dance, also the pop culture, what you mentioned, because they know the correct niche to the market. It's all about sculpting your own niche, into the industry. But I could compare it like this: Bharatanatyam is more of a structured pedagogy, and you need both theoretical and practical knowledge in order to practice it. Whereas the cinema dance, or it's more like a freestyle kind of thing, where you can just improvise and work on it at any point of life. Bharatanatyam needs a strong foundation, and you need to practice it at least for 8 to 10 years in order to perform, which is not the case as the cinematic dance forms.
I have a question.
Wow. Yeah. Go ahead.
The dance form is Bharatanatyam being
Is Bharatanatyam being
performed in temples
performed in temples like
now.
now, like it used to before?
Yes. Yes. Very good question. Yes, Bharatanatyam is from the temples. It's more like a temple dance kind of thing. They initially used to do it in temple as a part of the festival, temple festivals, but now we are presenting in theaters just like everybody is doing.
Is there a reason it's not seen a resurgence in the temples as it used to before, and is more seen in, like you said, theaters or other places outside of temples?
I would probably say again, see, even I started doing this in theaters. We want to spread the dance form, the existence of the dance form, create more awareness of what this dance form is. So the dancers nowadays are trying to take it to the next level, trying to present it in outside the temple zones as well. Temples, when it comes to temples, it's at least in the United States, it's the lack of funding to pay the dancers. The dancers are not paid when they do in the temple. They do it out of their own um, devotion to the god, or they do it as a part of a temple program if they are able to support the artist. That is why it's probably not practiced much, at least here compared to India. India, they still do it in temples, a lot in temples.
Just a side note, which they may not know, is that the Article 25 of the Constitution, all the temples are controlled by the government, and since it's controlled by the government, all the money is taken by the government. That's one of the things. And the Devdasis, who were kind of like nuns in the old days and who were dedicated to dance, the whole system got corrupted, and it got a bad reputation. And the British, of course, banned the dance because they were becoming anti-British. So the British brought in the law, took away all the money from the temples. Therefore the temples were totally had no funds for anything. So even now the government takes away all the money from the temples, so therefore dance cannot survive in the temples because the money is taken away by the politicians.
I would imagine that, as for example, I mean, there are big temple festivals that still take place in India. I mean, there's the Konark festival, for example. I mean, so there are so many festivals that take place, And in those forums, those are perfect opportunities to introduce it to the larger culture back again, because that's, I guess, the whole goal. Like, I think from what we're hearing and what was said earlier too, that it's the idea of helping the layperson understand the importance of spiritual and uplifted life so that you can attain liberation. I mean, that's ultimately another form of learning that.
Yeah, I would probably tell you that this dance form doesn't require propagation in India. It has become a more expensive dance form to practice in India, as I mentioned. People know Bharatanatyam, and a lot of people are practicing Bharatanatyam now in India more than what it used to be. And it's now seen as that elite dance form to be practiced in India. It's more in the West that people are trying to propagate it, that you have a dance form like this, because people are more open to culture, and that is why they accepted yoga. And at least 1 in 3 people I see practice yoga today, and they really want, and everybody wants. I don't think that art has any boundaries. If anyone is free to learn any art form that they really think would suit their lifestyle and would want to practice. So I think it's more in the West that they are trying to propagate. In India, there are several festivals, not only Konark festival. There is Chidambaram Natyanjali. There is Mylapore Kapalishwara Natyanjali. Every single small temple has Natyanjali programs, and the dancers there are supported really well, because there is an overflow of students there right now, if I could say that. People don't even get trained completely right at this point to start teaching. More of interns start teaching. It is something like that now in India. So it has reached a very large audience in India, and I would say it's a very positive sign that people are practicing arts.
Um, so if I want to learn this dance, I mean, it's Indian dance, these dramas. Is there any like specific literature or any like it's like if it's opera or ballet, there's a stories, right? And before you learn it, you can read about how this drama develops, right? So, or like in opera, there's a libretto that you can read, and or ballet or any kabuki or any no, or like if I'm Japanese, I know I'm Japanese, so I know like famous story of kabuki. It's very familiar with someone that who studies, I mean, who often go to the theater, and then I know the story of Swan Lake, I know the story of certain kabuki, or because you kind of go to the theater all the time, so the people who dance, not just the dance, but the audience knows about these stories and what you are presenting, because like you go to the theater and see this, people understand
No, I
the
understand.
narratives.
I understand your question. Yes, you can definitely read the stories. There are, and even today, in most of even the recitals, they print the story and hand it over to you in the brochure or the flyer.
Yeah.
So just like in the opera that you mentioned, you will be given a script or something to read what the dancer is doing. And nowadays, even when my students do the pit recital, we put a spotlight on the dancer, and we even show the hand gestures, whatever they are using, relevant to the words, so that they do it along with the music. You can always relate it and also know the storyline and the plot of what they are doing. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Because okay, you can learn the steps, but again, you need to convey that, right? The
Yeah.
story. I know that takes long time, but it's the but also the I was thinking like the audience understanding is because they don't understand this mudra or this like a gesture
No,
from the
they do change
dancing, but
everything now.
then they will have the story that way.
Previously in India, if you go and see the dance form in the same dance form in some theaters, they don't do the narrative part of it, because they presume that the people know it. But here it has become more modernized, and they are telling the literal meaning, word to word meaning, symbolism meaning. They print out and give you the literature from where what they have taken. So I think they do that here. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks today. Today was a wonderful session and it was great discussing all the questions with you. I really appreciate your enthusiasm and curiosity every week. It makes us really happy.
Are we gonna do a hand gestures anytime?
Definitely next week. All right. Next week we will start with hand gestures so that we don't get into the discussion before it. All right.